right, thanks for coming out tonight. I have been in financial aid for about 28 years. So I just recently came back into financial aid, and the changes are remarkable. We haven't been through major changes in the FAFSA formula set by Congress in a long time. So they're really doing everything different. Terminology is different. Platforms of how we go about and get things are different. The formula itself is different. The formula is supposed to help students get more financial aid. I've tested a few on a fake tool to see how it's going to change, and I haven't seen a great deal of changes, but there are some key changes that are coming up. How many of you have filled out a FAFSA in the last 2 or 3 years? Any of you in here have had older siblings or older children? No? Okay. So this will all be just your new normal, okay? So I guess that's not a bad thing for you. What is financial aid? It is financial aid are funds provided for schools or for students to help pay for school. They come in all different shapes and sizes, but basically we will talk a lot about tonight what is financial need. Okay, financial need is the cost that for you to go to a school, the cost of attendance, minus the student aid index. And that's the result. When you get the FAFSA completed, you're going to get this number, and it's going to say student aid index. And that's what they determine your financial need from. The SAI number stays the same no matter where you go to school. It is, again, calculated off the free application for federal student aid. And that's how we determine what your financial aid is going to be. So once we get the results at the school, then we start working on financial aid packages, and that's the number that we use to calculate most of your aid. Cost of attendance, what's included? We have tuition. That's what you're going to get billed for by the bursar's office, or the billing office. Sometimes they call it student account office at the college. You're going to have student technology fees. Food and housing, if you decide to be a residential student and live on campus, you'll get charged for that. But even if you're a commuter, you will still have an allowance for food and housing. Okay, so the Department of Ed allows us to build that into your calculation. Books and supplies, this is where you'll go. Most of the books and supplies now, or the books, are virtual online. So you will sign up for orientation, you'll get your schedule, you'll go out to their virtual bookstore, and there's opportunities there for you to either rent books, you can buy them outright, or you can buy used books. Now, our school has that system, the virtual bookstore, and renting books is pretty cheap. My son's going to a school down in Cincinnati, and I think I paid under $100 for his books for the semester. Now, who knows what next semester is going to be like and all the other semesters, but I've rented the books. So what we did is we went in there, it's like an Amazon account, you dump them into an account, and then I actually had them delivered to the school waiting in the bookstore, so that when he moved on and and we moved him in, he went down to the bookstore, showed his ID, and took his books. At the end of the semester, if you rent books, they will have a company come in and they will take them back. If you lose that book during that time, of course, and you rent them, that means that you're going to end up paying for that book. And that will depend on the policies of the company, whether you pay for a new book or a used book. Okay, so just know that there are options for books. You can also take the call numbers on the books, and you can go out and look for your own books at Amazon or eBay or something like that. Some of the books, they require you to have a computer ID for it, and those usually you can't rent those. Those you have to pay outright. So it depends on the faculty member, the professor, and what kind of books they want for you. And I know that at our school, professors really try to keep book costs down for students because they can find so much of their material now online, and some of the schools will even do what they call a hybrid class. So some of your class will be online, some of it will be face-to-face in person, where you actually go to a classroom and meet with and have the professor lecture you. So there's all different new technologies out there, and so the faculty members are using all of them. We do have an allowance for miscellaneous and personal expenses. This is like, you're going to have money to go get your a haircut every now and then. You might want to have pizza money, laundry, and all those kind of things that you need just to survive. You know, you're gonna have to have toothpaste and all that kind of stuff. So we allow a personal expense in it and a transportation expense, because we know students are working while they're going to college, so they have a car, they can go back and forth to their job in between classes. You want to come home for a while during Christmas break and during Thanksgiving break, so we allow transportation costs as well. That's something you're going to be incurring as a family. We're not going to bill you for it, but you are going to incur in it. So that's why the Department of Ed allows us to build this cost of attendance for you to kind of give you a more realistic expectation of what school is going to cost. Now, the cost of attendance varies no matter where you go. Everybody has different tuition. Everybody has different housing and food costs. So we all have guidelines that we have to follow to develop these cost of attendance. But of course, for example, you're looking at this chart. Number one would be like a private school. Bluffton, Defiance, Adrian, we're all private schools, and so we don't get state funding from the state of Ohio to run our school. So that's why our private costs are, our costs are somewhat higher than what number two would be, which would be like a Toledo, a Bowling Green State University. And the third one there that you're looking at, that's like a community college, Northwest State, those kind of costs. If you notice, the SAI, the Student Aid Index, doesn't change when you go to whatever school you go to. So your financial need is going to vary depending on what school you choose to go to. So basically, you shouldn't always discount a higher cost school because you might get more financial aid. So these are just some things to consider while you're looking and shopping around at different schools. A lot of us have what we call a net price calculator on our websites. It's kind of like a little tiny estimator. It doesn't give a lot of detail, but it gives you a rough idea of what kind of cost you have. You're going to be putting in some basic information, grade point average, income information, that kind of thing, to determine a little tiny estimate. So you could do estimates if you were kind of considering maybe a private school but you weren't sure, or a community college and you're not sure of the cost. Aid comes in different forms: scholarships, grants, loans, and employment opportunities. There's different kinds. It's merit, meaning you've earned it in high school. Maybe you had a certain grade point average, and you're going to get a merit academic scholarship based on your high school performance. It could be that you did an audition in music, and because you're a great singer or you play an instrument, you might get a merit scholarship for music. Some schools offer athletic aid, so it could be based on your athletic performance. The need-based aid is going to be based on the results of your free application for federal student aid, or the FAFSA. Grants don't have to be repaid. You want scholarships and grants, as many as you can get. Self-help aid is considered loans and work. Okay, so that's things that you're either having to borrow and repay back, or you're earning as you go. The FAFSA will determine whether you are going to be Pell Grant eligible or not. That formula has changed, so there's 3 different ways you can be Pell Grant eligible, but the school will tell you whether you're going to be eligible or not, okay? And this year, the dollar amount was $739 all the way up to $7,395 for a full-time student. So we don't have an idea yet of what next year is going to bring. We've heard higher, we've heard the same. I can't tell you until they come out with the appropriations and how much they're going to allocate for next year. Along with that, if you are an early applicant, you might qualify for the Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, and it can be up to $4,000. Most schools keep it between $500 to maybe a couple $1,000s. The reason I say you have to be an early bird to get the worm, basically, with the SEOG grant is because the Department of Education considers this a campus-based program. Basically, they give me a pot of money, and I award it to the neediest students until I run out. Once I run out, I'm done. Okay, so that's why it's important to apply early. If you are a state, you go to a school in the state of Ohio, and you are an Ohio resident, and you're Pell Grant eligible, you may qualify for the Ohio College Opportunity Grant. There's different sites to go on and look at the ohiohighered.org website to see about Ohio War Orphans, the National Guard, the Safety Officers Memorial, nursing. Choose Ohio First are your STEM programs, your science, technology, engineering, and math. They may have scholarships for you there. The Ohio Education and Training Voucher, there's some really great opportunities with the Ohio programs, but some of them you have to go on and apply yourself, and there are separate applications for them. The OCOG does not require a separate application, but many of the other ones do. So just be aware that you might want to check out that website and see what you might be eligible for based on your specific situation. Schools are going to offer you institutional dollars, and some of them are going to be need-based. Some of them are going to be non-need-based, okay? So some of them might require that you come in for an interview, again, like a music audition, or maybe they offer full tuition and they have a competition day on campus. We have one coming up very soon, and students have to be admitted and with a certain GPA, and then we invite them to campus and they go through an competition to see if they are eligible for the full tuition scholarships. Private scholarships, these are ones that you're going to find on your own from your local high school guidance counselor. He just showed you that website. Be careful if you go into a website and they say, give me $29.95 and I'll find you a scholarship. That's a scam. Get out of it. Don't pay any money for that, because we can offer that for you for free with all the websites that we know are good websites to go into. If you happen to get into a site that is charging you for the FAFSA, get out of that. Don't put your Venmo money or whatever into it, because that's not going to be beneficial to you. It is a free application with the Federal Department of Education. So it's a free application, so you don't pay for that. Again, you've already seen some of these websites. Schools will have different policies on how they treat outside scholarships. When I have a student bring me outside scholarships, I add it on top and I reduce their work study and their loans. Not all schools do that, all right? But students, a little bit of effort can go a long way. I had a student this year that had, I think, 10 scholarships that added up to like $7,000. And some of them were renewable for the next year. And this student brought in that and ended up not having to take any loans out. So be diligent, look for these things. I know we're all very busy people, but you might have to write an essay. Just save that essay for the next scholarship application and just do your best to try to see if you can get some of these outside scholarships, because they really do add up to big money if you can just get a few here and there. They're going to help you out. Self-help aid employment is federal work study. Maybe you've heard of the federal work study program. It's where you have demonstrated financial need. You go on campus. You look for a campus job. You get paid according to their policies, sometimes once a month, sometimes twice a month. They can be on campus or off campus opportunities. I worked in the financial aid office at Defiance College when I was getting my degree. Never did I even think that I was going to end up being the director of a financial aid program somewhere, and that was going to be my career. Just because you work in the library doesn't mean you're going to be a librarian, or if you work in food service doesn't mean that you're going to have that career the rest of your life. But it does give you an opportunity to earn some money as you go. And any little bit that you can earn as you go is going to help you. Budgeting is tough for students, okay? We're used to having a lot of things, but when you get to college, you know, mom and dad may not be sending you all this money that you normally get. You might have to earn a little bit on your own and help yourself a little bit. And there is the sense of freedom when you do earn your own paycheck and you can buy your own things. So just some things to think about. Even if you're not work-study eligible, you still may be able to get a campus job, and it could be institutional dollars that they can do, okay? So just check with your schools when you get there if you're really interested in working. I love it when students work, because guess what? If they come work for me and they have problems with a faculty member or they have a roommate issue, we're there to mentor them, and that helps the student not feel so alone, especially if they're 2 or 3 hours away from school or from home. So that can help out too. Loans, we don't like loans, but you are investing in your education, and loans are not a bad thing. You can borrow up to a certain level depending on your financial need and your grade level. Parents, you can borrow on behalf of your son or daughter, and then there are things called alternative loans, which are loans that are used, they're like consumer loans, so like you can go to a local bank and get them. They can be in the students' names as well, although you probably have to have a cosigner for those kind. Some schools participate in what they call the Teach Grant. Okay, for this year, the Teach Grant was $3,772, but it can go up to $4,000. If you're going in the teaching field, you may be offered a Teach Grant. Okay, now remember, you can see on here it says Teach Grant/loan. What does that mean? Well, if you decide to go into teaching, you take a Teach Grant your freshman year. You go through some of the courses of teaching and you're like, nope, I don't want to be a teacher. I'm going to go be a nurse. And you've accepted this Teach Grant. This Teach Grant then becomes a loan. Okay? So it is a little bit of a gamble as far as, getting help for college and all that. But, I've got some students that they've always wanted to be a teacher, and they have taken the Teach Grant at my school. They do have to agree to do a service requirement upon graduation so that this doesn't turn into a loan, okay? So if you're offered a Teach Grant, student, you will have to go into the studentaid.gov portal, and you will have to complete an agreement to serve and a counseling session to help you understand what you're getting into. You can do those sessions and then decline it later. Just because you do those sessions and you do the agreement to serve doesn't mean that you have to take that. If you do the agreement to serve and you go, nope, I'm not doing that, that's fine. You would just tell the school that you're not going to take the Teach Grant. So you have an option there. So just know that, read all the information on it, explore your opportunities, and then make a decision. The federal direct subsidized loan, you do have to show need according to the FAFSA. It is going to be included in your award offers that the schools are going to give you, okay? Sometimes community colleges don't offer you loans, but if they don't and you want to take out a student loan, you would just go to their office and ask them for that. This particular loan is interest-free as long as the student is enrolled at least 6 credit hours, which is considered half-time enrollment at most schools. Student, it'll be in your name only. Parents, you don't have to co-sign. You do have to be a reference so that in case your son or daughter doesn't pay the loan back, they'll call you to help track your son or daughter down with a new address and help them get onto the repayment plan. Students, you have 10 years to repay the loan after you graduate, or if you drop below what they call 6 credit hours, half-time enrollment. You do get a 6 months grace period when you graduate, or if you decide to drop out and you don't want to be in school anymore and you had a student loan, you still get the 6 months before you have to start making payments on it, and then those payments go for 10 years. The interest rate on that right now is at 5.5%, and they do take out an origination fee of 1.057%. Okay, so there's some little things involved. I'm going to tell you that probably interest rates will go up. We won't know that in probably until July. They usually wait that long. But as a first-year student, you can borrow up to $3,500 in this program. Sophomore, $4,500, and by the time you're a junior and senior grade level status, it's up to $5,500. The unsubsidized loan is non-need based. Okay, so you can still get a loan even if mom and dad made $1 million. You can still get a student loan in your name. It will be included on the award letter. You can accept or decline it. All these loans you can accept and decline at any time. You just have to tell the school, put it in writing to the school. This loan is not interest-free while you're going to school, but everything else is the same. 10 years to repay, 6 months grace period, interest rate. You can choose to pay interest as you go. Now, if you get the full maximum subsidized loan, the maximum unsub you can get is $2,000. Okay, so I'll have a chart here that'll show that in a minute. What's the process? Every year you have to complete the free application for federal student aid. Student, you would have to go on and complete a master promissory note saying that you promise to repay the loan at studentloans.gov or studentaid.gov. You complete an entrance loan counseling, and sometimes you may have to provide other information to the school before you can secure all your financial aid. That's called verification. Not everybody is selected for verification, just a random sample. Verification basically says, we're doing a quality control check on your application to make sure you filled it out correctly. Here's the chart that kind of shows you how much you can borrow. And again, the base amount, the subsidized amount is the need-based amount. So you may only have, let's say, you don't have enough need for all $3,500. You might get $2,000 in a subsidized and $3,500 in the unsub. Okay, so it varies depending on your financial need. Parents, you can borrow. This is a loan in your name to help pay for college expenses. It is the eligibility is the cost of attendance, cost of education that we talked about, minus all the student's financial need or financial aid. It is a fixed interest rate of 8.05% for this year. I think at this point they still have the cap at 9%. We, again, won't know what the cap will be and how much it'll be for next year. But they do take out a hefty fee. They take out 4.228% to process that loan. Repayment on this loan can begin 60 days after the full loan is dispersed to the student's account, and you can have up to 10 to 25 years to repay the loan depending on the repayment plan that you choose. You can defer the loan, but remember, you're deferring a loan at 8% for 4 years, and that's going to add up. So just be careful when you're looking at the Parent Plus loan and how much you want to borrow. Most schools are going to offer you a payment plan. So what you could do is you could do a small payment plan. Your student could borrow some of the money, and then you could borrow the rest. You might want to put some cash down from a graduation party, and then slice it and dice it to make it work for you so that you can kind of keep your loan debt as low as you can. So most schools are going to offer you a payment plan option and some of those types of things, so just be aware of that. How do you go and get the Parent Plus loan? Parents, you have to complete a loan application on studentaid.gov. You complete a prom note, you go through a credit check. Okay, they're doing an adverse credit check. They're not doing a debt to income ratio. They're looking at things like, did you have any of your wages garnished? Did you have a bankruptcy? Are you behind more than 90 days on some of your bills? Those kind of things, that's what they're looking for. What happens if you're denied the loan? Parents, you have a couple options if you're denied the loan. One, you can appeal the Department of Education and say, you know what, that 90-day payment, my insurance messed up, they didn't pay that, I'm not 90 days anymore, I want to appeal it, and then they'll decide whether you can get the loan. You can get an endorser, which is a cosigner for you as a parent. And that means that the endorser or the cosigner would have to go out and fill out quite a bit of paperwork. They would have to do an addendum with your application. They would have to get passwords with you as Department of Ed to sign on to do that. Some student parents do the Parent Plus loan and get denied so that their son or daughter then can borrow up to $4,000. So if you decide you don't want to appeal, or you did appeal and it didn't go through, you don't have an endorser, the Department of Ed allows the student to borrow up to $4,000, and by the time they're junior, senior year, they can borrow up to $5,000. Is it going to pay the bill? Maybe not, but it's going to help pay the bill. So the Department of Education realizes that it's not the student's fault that maybe a loan is denied in the parent's name, so they're providing this other option to try to help out. Alternative loans are consumer loans, not funded by the federal government. Students, if you go out and apply for this loan, you are probably going to have a cosigner because they will look at debt to income ratio. Interest rate could be, in some cases, determined by the credit score of the cosigner. Repayment may be required while the student is enrolled at school. It depends on the lender that you're looking at. And some lenders, parents, allow for a cosigner release if the student makes on-time payments over a period of time. Okay, so the parent doesn't have to be the cosigner. It can be a grandparent. I've seen older brothers and sisters. I've seen best friends, moms and dads. I've seen kind of a little bit of everything. So it's just whoever has good credit history that could cosign for the student and agree to pay that loan back if that student does not. So the financial aid application process is, student, you're going to go on and you can complete the free application for federal student aid with mom and dad's information. We'll talk about that in a minute. It's going to go through what we call a need analysis system with the Department of Ed. Then You get to decide which schools it goes to. You can have up to 20 schools on the free application for federal student aid right now. And if you had 40 schools that you wanted to apply for, you could submit it, wait a couple days, and go back and replace all of those colleges with different colleges, and more schools would get that. I've never seen a student apply to that many schools, but that's an option for you. If you put Defiance College on there and you complete your application, I'm going to download it from the U.S. Department of Education. And if you're an accepted student, because most schools want you to be admitted into their college before they'll give you an aid offer. If you're accepted, then I will start preparing your financial aid award to you, and either we email it to you on a student portal or we'll mail it to you. Some schools do both, some do one or the other. At the same time you're submitting the application, student, you're getting a report back from the government saying your process, and if you want to go look at your application, here it is, okay? And then if you look at it and you say, uh-oh, I've made a mistake on there, you have the option to go back and make a correction on the application, okay? So we have corrections all the time on the applications. It just happens. So what are you going to need to do the FAFSA? Okay, well, right now, everything is electronic, so you're going to go to studentaid.gov. Okay, that's going to be the place where you're going to have everything. You're going to be able to sign your prom notes. You're going to be able to do your entrance and exit loan counselings. You're going to be able to do your teach grant information. You're going to be able to track your loans and how much in debt you are. Parents, you do the Parent Plus loan on there. Everything's done on this portal. And you will have to do an electronic signature, which is called the FSA ID. Okay? So for this year and only this year, the FAFSA is going to open up, they say, because of all these changes, sometime in December. The law says that they have to have it out and ready on December 31st. Okay? Government shutdown could loom out there. We don't know if that's going to happen. We don't know how that's going to affect some of these processes. We don't know yet. So this year we're just going to have to be patient with the Department of Ed because we just don't know when it's going to open up. Okay, but we're all in it together. So everybody across the United States is in the same boat that we all are in Northwest Ohio. Next year, you can file as early as October 1st and thereafter. Okay, so just this year, it's delayed. What do you need to complete the FAFSA? Social Security numbers, alien registration number if you're not a U.S. citizen, 2022 tax return. So we're doing prior year income. W-2s might be helpful as well, bank statements and records of investments, records of untaxed income. Investments can include farm, we'll talk about that in a little bit, farmland. If you own a house somewhere that you don't live in, maybe a rental, those have to be included. You need your FSA ID, your federal student aid ID to sign the application, and you're going to use that for everything. To fill out your Parent Plus loan, to do prom notes, that number is important. You're going to need that for almost everything you do. And if you're a dependent student, you'll need all the information for your parents as well. Example of investments include you don't include the home you live in, but again, rental properties, trust funds, money market funds, mutual funds, CDs, stock options, all these kind of things. When you go into the portal and you're starting to fill out the FAFSA, they're going to have all these little drop-down boxes that are going to have information there for you. So then you can read the instructions. And then if you get stuck, you can chat with people up to, I think, 8 p.m. in the evening, or you can call people and talk to them and say, am I filling this out right? You can also save the application, call a financial aid office in the next morning, go back in, pull it back up, and can keep on continuing with it. So you've got some options there. Investments also include the 529 plans. So if a student who has to report mom and dad on the FAFSA, if you have a 529 plan for that student, it is the parent's investment. And that's kind of a new change this year. And that actually is more helpful to the student. Things you don't include the home you live in, the value of life insurance policies, retirement plans, pension funds, annuities, and on the goes. Okay, so there's certain things you don't have to include anymore. Again, those drop-down boxes, those instructions, take your time and read it. It'll take you maybe 45 minutes to an hour the first time you do a FAFSA, just because you're going to want to read through everything. This year, they are including the net worth of a business or an investment farm. And the net worth basically means the current value minus all the debts. So if you were to sell it, what would your profit be? That's what you got to report. The farm, you do have to include the buildings, machinery, equipment, inventory, all those kind of things. Okay, so that is different this year. We have not had a farm reported since, I don't know when. Back in 94, 95, they took that out of the formula. They've put it back in the formula. Everything comes back around. So your FSA ID, again, we've talked about that. What are you going to need to create it? Now, here's the tricky part this year. So, student, you're going to need it. And I'm going to say this because I don't know how you're going to how you filed your tax returns, but parents, both parents are going to need it. Okay? This is one of the changes. It used to be just one parent could do it, but I'm going to tell you in a little bit why it's important that both parents are going to need an FSA ID this year. All right? This is what the landing page supposedly is going to look like, and this is where you will start, and you will start, if you look there, it says Start a New Form under the 2425 FAFSA form. You're going to click that little button, and then it's going to say, Student, it's time to log in. You're going to use your FSA ID, you're going to log in, put your password in, you're going to click it, and you're going to start the application process. And it really, I've looked at the demos, and the demos are really actually pretty simple. They're easy to read, they're easy to go through. So, you know, just be careful when you're completing your FSA ID, making sure that take your time, making sure your Social Security number is correct when you're completing that, and your date of birth, and your names are correct, okay, your legal names. Because I've seen parents get hung up on, they messed up a Social Security number, and the recovery to get their FSAD can be quite lengthy, and it is very frustrating. So just as you're doing it, take your time and make sure that you're typing them in correctly and that there are no errors on that. That'll make your process so much easier. All right, so student, you're going to start your platform, and you're going to, that's what they're calling them, like little consent platforms. You're going to go into the FAFSA, and you're going to start completing it. You're going to put your name and your address and your birth date and all this kind of stuff, and then you're going to be asked certain questions to determine whether you are an independent student and you don't need parents' information, or you're a dependent student and you have to provide parent information. So these are the questions. Were you born after the year 2000, so you're 24 years old? Most of you will say no. Are you currently serving active duty in the U.S. Armed Forces for purposes other than training? Probably not. You're a veteran of the U.S. Armed Forces? No, you won't be saying that this year because you're still in high school. Does a student have children or other people who live with them and they receive more than half their support from them, and that support will continue from July 1st of 24 through June 30th of 25, okay? That one can be tricky. So if you provide more than half support of a child that you have right now, you can mark yes to that box. Some schools may check out and ask you, did you fill it out right? And you may have to provide your documentation of your half support of the child. Sometimes they don't, okay? It just depends on the school. At any time since the student turned 13, were they an orphan, no living biological or adoptive parents? Were they a ward of the court, meaning the court took over their guardianship and they were legal guardians, is the court system? They were in foster care. Were they emancipated minor determined by the court system? Or was a student in legal guardianship with someone other than their parent or step-parent, and they have a court document to prove it? Okay, so if you answered yes to one of these questions, you are going to be an independent student. We do have certain situations that happen that students don't know where mom and dad are. Okay, I've seen some very unusual situations in my 28 years of doing financial aid where mom and dad just aren't in the picture. So if you answer no to all these questions, student, you're going to be asked this question, but you don't have a parent and you don't know where the parent is, you're going to check a box on the FAFSA. And then when I get that information, I'm going to reach out to you and say, you got to document your story to me. And I then will determine whether you can be independent. Okay? So that's a little different this year. So if you have an unusual situation, you can mark the box, and then the school will reach out to you. Okay? So just know that you may have to, unfortunately, maybe relive some painful things and document some things in order to continue on with your financial aid application. That's hard for us. We don't like to see that, but we know things happen and we're there, and everything in the office is confidential. Okay, so we don't go blabbing around everybody's information. All right, so the student does their section, and then they are going to have a section. Let's say you earned income in 2022, student, and you filed a tax return. What you are going to do is you are going to click a box to give the U.S. Department consent to go out to the IRS and retrieve all your information and put it on the FAFSA for you. Okay, this is not an option. You have to do this if you want to get financial aid. All right. Rare cases, if you have trouble, there are some rare cases that we can do a paper FAFSA. Used to be a student could bring a paper FAFSA in and I could log it in and do it for them. I can't do that anymore. So they still have a version of a paper FAFSA to do. It will take a lot longer to process. But this new data exchange program is part of the new way that we have to go about things, okay? So after you do all that and you answer all the questions on the student side, and I know mom and dad will probably be helping you, and I would do that too with my son, kind of helping them get through it. Then they're gonna say to the student, who are the contributors to the FAFSA? Okay, and the contributor is a parent, spouse, or a step-parent. Okay, so they are going to give the U.S. Department of Education permission to ask you parents to go in and fill out your section of the FAFSA. And they're doing this because you don't want your child to give the U.S. Department of Education consent to go out and get your IRS information. You want to do that. So what the student is doing is saying, I'm listing my parents, then you'll get an email from the Department of Education, and then it will give you, hey, somebody's asked you to go on and put information down on the FAFSA. You'll click it, and then you'll go through your platform where you'll log in and start filling out your questions. When you get to the income section, you will give consent to the U.S. Department of Education to go out to the IRS and pull all your information down on the application. If you refuse to give consent, your student doesn't get aid. Okay? It sounds very, very harsh, but this is the new way that we're dealing with. So, student, who are you going to give consent to? Okay? It's usually a parent, but let's look at all the different scenarios that we can go through. So if you have parents who live together, they're married and not separated, and who are unmarried but they live together. So mom and dad live together but they're not married. There's no common law marriage in Ohio, so they're just living together. Both parents have to complete the FAFSA because they're looking at a family unit. Who in that family is contributing to the household bills, paying the electric bill, the mortgage, all that, food, all those kind of things, okay? A parent who was widowed or divorced and is now remarried, you include the parent and the step-parent, okay? We'll talk about divorced parents in a second. If you're a single parent who is not divorced or separated, it's just that one parent that's going to go on the FAFSA. Divorced or separated parents not remarried, you include the information about the parent that gave the greater support. So let me talk about that a little bit. So divorced and separated parents, you've got, I guess the easiest way, you've got mom and dad. Mom and dad are divorced, but mom and dad are remarried to other people. and you go back and forth to mom and dad. Or maybe you don't go back and forth to mom and dad. The Department of Education says the parent that goes on the FAFSA is the one that provides the most greater support for the student during the 12 months immediately prior to filing the FAFSA. So if you live equal with mom and dad, okay, mom and dad are divorced, and you go back and forth equally, and they pay equal, it's the parent that has the most assets and the most income that has to go on the application. That's new. Okay, so that's different. If mom and dad are married, it's just mom and dad on the FAFSA. So that's a pretty easy standard one. Okay, but if mom and dad are, let's say they're divorced and not remarried. Mom and dad are divorced, not remarried, and you go back and forth with mom, you live with them. Maybe you just live with mom, you don't live with dad, but dad gives support to you, and it's greater support than what mom does, and they make more money than dad. Even if you're not living with dad, dad's information is supposed to go on the FAFSA. Did I just really confuse all of you? Because it sounds very, very confusing. Okay? So it's tricky. So when you are reading about the contributor, when the student's going in and giving permission to a parent, they're going to get a little wizard, and they're going to be asked a few questions, and these questions are going to help the student and you as a family determine who gets put on the FAFSA. Now, why both parents need an FSA ID is because if mom and dad married to each other, but they decided that it was to their benefit to file separate on their tax returns, each parent has to give consent to the U.S. Department of Education to take the information and put it on the FAFSA. If mom and dad filed jointly, only one parent has to have the FSA ID to file and to give consent. So married filing joint, you only need one parent to give consent. Married filing separate, both parents have to have consent, and both parents have to have the FSA ID. I tell you just to get both parents to get the FSA ID because if mom or dad, depending on who wants to maybe complete a PLUS loan, both of you are going to need an ID if you decide that mom signed the FAFSA, but dad's doing the PLUS loan, so you're both going to need IDs. You can go home tonight and do those IDs. That system is not changing, but you need to get your IDs at least 3 days before you file your FAFSA. So you can go get that stuff done tonight, tomorrow, next week, sometime in the early part of December. You can have that all ready to go, so when they do open the portal, you'll be ready, you'll be all set with that. You are using prior year income. We talked about that, so you're going to be using 2-year prior income. What happens if it changes? We'll talk about that because it sometimes does. So this direct data exchange, they're calling it the DDX, is what they do to transfer the information back to the FAFSA. So 2 years ago, you had a great job, and then you decided you had a career change, and you decided that you moved into a different job, and it paid a lot less. What do? You write to the financial aid offices, and you explain your situation, and you provide documentation of what your income is. So I have the option to look at somebody's 23 income. So if 22 income was, let's say, $100,000, and now you're only making 50, you can give me your 23 W-2s at the end of December or January, and I can use that as estimated income, or you can get your taxes done. If you get your taxes done really early, you can give me your taxes, and I can go in and do a recalculation and see if you qualify for more financial aid. You can't do that, but I can do it behind the scenes, okay? So there's options if you have situations that are outside of the norm with your finances. Whoops. Things like changes in employment, paid medical expenses not covered by insurance, parents' marital status. Maybe mom and dad were married in 22, maybe they're separated in 23, then they got divorced in 24. What do? Okay, so you'll talk to the financial aid office about how to complete that application and how that might have changed with your income. Unusual dependent care expenses. Now here's the new one, paid tuition expenses either at an elementary or secondary school, that's always been there, but now at a college or university. Because in the past, if you had 2 in college at the same time, 2 kids going to college at the same time, the Department of Ed said, hey, the parent contribution, we're going to take half of it and give it to one kid, and now the half given to another kid. They eliminated that for next year. So if you have 2 students in college, you call their financial aid office and see how they're going to handle that. I have made the decision that I'm going to do everything I can do to help a student get as much financial aid as possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the parent to give me receipts of what they paid in the prior year or what they're going to be paying in the current year, and I'm going to go in and adjust income or assets, whichever's in the best interest of the student, to help the family out for having 2 in college. I was at a conference not too long ago, and one school flat out said, we're not doing anything. If the student and the sibling come to my college, I'll give them a discount, but we're not going to do any special circumstances for more than 1 student in college. We've taken the stance that we're going to, okay? Every school is going to be different, all right? So know that that could be, you can write the letter, you can provide the documentation. They have to respond back to you in a timely manner, and they will either say, yes, it gave you more financial aid, or no, it didn't, or no, we're not going to do it because we're not doing it for this situation, okay? So just know that there's these special circumstances, and they call them professional judgments. Every school has their policies on what they will allow and what they won't allow, and you can't appeal the Department of Ed. I've had schools that are students that have said, well, this school did it this way and you're doing it this way. Well, they're doing it that way, I'm doing it this way. You can't argue it out. We're doing it our way because that's our policies, okay? Other unusual circumstances that we talked about is the situations where the student has no contact with parent, and that's going to be addressed when you complete the FAFSA. So student, just know that we're going to help you through that process. Verification is that random selection. They have algorithms behind the scene, and they know which families and what types of incomes make the most errors, and then they select them for verification. Well, because of the new formula, they don't have any algorithms, so they're just randomly selecting people for verification. It used to be people who had Pell Grants, you know, the free money from the Department of Education, were more likely to be selected than non-Pell students. They said this year they're just randomly picking people, okay? So what does that mean? That means that you will have to provide a document that the school will give you to either re-verify your household size and number in college. Number in college isn't going to matter, but for me it would, because if I saw that you put 2 in college, then I might reach out to you and say, hey, you know, what's your cost? Let me see how I can help you. Some schools don't. So you're going to have to provide a little bit more information to the financial aid office to secure your financial aid. Students, you may have to prove who you are. It's an identity of education purpose. Okay, you have to take a statement in, take your ID in, fill out a form, take your ID in, they sign off on it, or you have to have somebody notarize it, okay, and then you mail it into them. A lot of times you can't scan some of these things. You have to mail them in because they want what they call wet signatures. They don't want a scanned signature. They want a real live signature. So we're still learning about this new verification process and what it's going to involve and what we're going to need to do. But just know if the school is asking for more information, give it to them right away, because if you have made an error, they're going to correct it. It can change your aid a little bit. There should be less errors because you are going out to the IRS, and that's real information that's coming down to your application. So there should be less errors on that. Okay, so what's the timeline? Right now you should be reviewing and going to college visits, kind of picking your top schools that you're interested in. Doing a campus visit really helps you get a feel for that. We went to a school and my son was, I love it, I love it, I love it. And we went to another school and he's like, that's my school. Okay, sometimes you can just feel that. Sometimes you can feel it and not afford it. Okay, and then you have to make different choices, but every choice that you make in life is going to take you down a path that maybe you were destined to go down. Okay, so explore those things. Start looking on the college websites. Students, you are probably going to start getting emails, and maybe some of you already have, from the different schools, and they're going to have their own little student portal. When my son went to college, that's what it was. I didn't have a parent portal, so I was constantly asking him, do you have this in? Do you have that in? Did you get your transcript in? You know, all those different things. Did you get your housing form in? Did you pay your deposit? You know, because he had the portal. I didn't have it. So students, make sure you're communicating with mom and dad to make sure that they know what's going on behind the scenes on these portals. And then when you go to college, it's going to be the same way. You know, right now, mom and dad have access to your grades. You know, if they have the right passwords and stuff and they can look them up. In college, you don't have that, okay? Because the students are protected by the Family Rights and Privacy Act, the FERPA Act. It's like HIPAA with medical. It's this with higher education. So my student, I told him, if you are going to have the car down at the school you're at, you are going to show me your grades and I'm going to be able to look at them, okay? So he gave me his portal access for me to look at them. All right, and then we have all these agreements if he does well. I'm going to tell you, I don't want the stress of looking at it, so I haven't looked at those grades. I don't know how he's doing. He's telling me whatever he's telling me, but I'm not looking at the grades because I just don't need the extra stress in my life. And you know what? This is his thing. He's in college now. This is your thing. If you do well, it's on you. If you do bad, it's on you. And if you do bad, you'll just come home and you'll get a job and you'll move on. So that's my philosophy. You can take it with what you want to on that. After you're admitted into the colleges and you're sending your admissions applications and you are getting your high school transcripts in, then FAFSA comes out, you fill out your application, then I get busy working on all these applications and I put high priority on new students coming into the school because you need to make decisions. And we will then send you out letters. We might send them out through the admissions portal that you have, and you might get them that way. You might get them through an email. You might get them as a hard copy at home. So every school does that a little different. Then you're going to be accepting and declining awards and making your tuition deposits, and then you'll be starting to sign up for orientation, and you'll fill out all the paperwork that you need to fill out and get going on it and that kind of thing. So it's a journey. Okay, you're looking at a big mountain. You're going to take it one little step at a time. Admissions officers, counselors are going to help you through those processes. You're going to get lots of reminder notices. Students, you're going to get tired of seeing them. We're going to help in the financial aid office to help you through this journey. It seems overwhelming right now, but believe me, you will get through it. And if you take it one little step at a time, it will happen. Okay, and you'll get through it. I didn't think I would get emotional when I left my kid at college. Boy, that's surprising. So parents, it's a great adventure for them. They're starting a new chapter in their life. I was so happy for him, and I was like bawling my eyes out on the way home, and my husband's like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, I don't know. It's an emotional time for everybody. The students are starting out, and he calls me more. It's amazing, but he calls me more, and he calls me, and I have to remember, does he want me to fix the problem, does he want me to listen, or does he want me to be a cheerleader? Which one of the three does he want me to be? And sometimes I have to figure that out. Like yesterday, he called me, and he was having a little problem with a faculty member not updating his grades. And I'm like, I finally listened, and I said, well, what are you doing about it? Well, this is what I've done, Mom. Oh, that's really good. Is there anything I can help you with? Nope. Okay. They have to start adulting. They have to start figuring it out. And boy, parents, I'm going to tell you, it's hard. It's hard. I'm going through it. So I have a totally different perspective than when I first started out in financial aid. I'm on your side now. And so, you will get through it, and they will come home, and he is much more mature. And I just try not to look at Life 360 too much because I said I wasn't going to get rid of that app either until I felt comfortable. So just know it is a journey. We're going to help you through it in higher education, and everything will be great. And students, you will go to class. Go to class. Please go to class. That's the number one thing. If you don't go to class, you don't know. But that's an important part of college. And just enjoy your next adventure because it truly is a good thing for you. So I will stay afterwards for any kind of questions you have, and hopefully things that I can't answer and know the answer to right now, because they're still making changes with the U.S. Department of Education, and we're still reading every day. I said I feel like I'm writing an eternal term paper, writing all my policies and procedures and trying to figure all this out for all of you folks. So I wish you the best of luck. Thank you for coming. Students, thank you for coming. I'm glad you're at least getting a little chunk of what this is all going to be about. You have final comments? Nope. All right. Go enjoy your evening.